for the state. To set the example for the state and maybe the whole Pacific on clean energy. And so you can kind of take a leadership role here in making that happen.
Okay. Well, our hydrogen bus, I'm not sure if you're going to be on the island on July 11th. I think we're doing our big launch. So within 2 weeks.
Yeah, Mitch Ewan gave me the heads up, and I actually might try and get over there because I'm overdue for a trip to the Big Island. So I might try and sync it up with that. But that's pretty exciting. And your Keiki Museum just sent me a picture of their little miniature bus that they built for the Keiki Museum that eventually it's a Helion bus mock-up that's supposed to have a hydrogen.
Helion bus.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm glad you're bringing that up because Doug Adams, I see, is online. We're supposed to be purchasing a electrolyzer for the museum. Don't forget, Doug.
I just sent a note to Dave Molinaro at HCAT too. When I was there, we purchased a Polaris electric Polaris quad, and we converted it to a hydrogen fuel cell quad. And it's pretty much just sitting. The state and the city of Honolulu were supposed to be using it, along with some 5 kilowatt generators and light carts that are all hydrogen powered. And so I told Dave yesterday, the county of Hawaii is the only people that are really doing anything with hydrogen. Why don't you just take that stuff and don't give it to the county? And so we'll see if he does that. But it would be good that if you guys would have like 2 5 kilowatt generators that are hydrogen powered and 2 light carts, those light carts that the maintenance or the road crews use to light up their work site at night. Pretty powerful. We use one of them to do a Oktoberfest, to light up the Oktoberfest in Honolulu during an event. They're really powerful, and you could use them and integrate them into your system because right now they're not being used. And the little quad cart would be something you put either in Hilo or in Kona because it's a low speed vehicle. It's not supposed to go on a road more than 35 miles an hour, but it's something that you guys could use. So we'll see. I'll follow up with Molinaro and see if they can transfer that to you.
Okay.
Okay, I see Rep Lowen popped in too. So
hi, Nicole.
Hi.
We don't know if Rep Nakashima is going to be on. He's traveling right now, but he said he would try and log in from wherever he's at. I think he's on vacation, probably for 4th of July week. So we'll see if he comes in. Nicole, did you put together a presentation?
However you guys want to run it, I have some slides I can use that I did for another recent thing I did, just kind of, what happened at the legislature this year in terms of energy stuff. But I can also just do Q&A.
Okay. Well, we're kind of giving the mayor the run of the thing today. And, we go for an hour at least. Most of ours end up going an hour and a half. So if the mayor has to bail, and if you have comments to make, you can throw the slides up. We'll give you screen share on the slides. You can throw your slides up if you want to get them ready.
Okay, well, what's the plan?
Okay. The plan is to let the mayor.
Okay.
let the mayor have the first 20 minutes.
Okay.
And do some Q&A. We have Eugene Tien also on schedule to give the state of mostly natural gas. He's going to be talking about with the state, basically the economic picture. And then yourself and Rep Nakashima, if you want to have any time there, we can block you in and put you on
I'm here because you asked me to be part of a panel or present, so I assume that's what's happening at some point.
Yes. So you can present your we coordinate this with Renew Rebuild Hawaii. I'm just the moderator of this forum. But when we were talking about it, we said we wanted you to be able to address the legislature, which you've got the slides to do, what the legislature's been doing, kind of look forward to maybe next session what kind of things you'd like to see on the energy side going into the next session of the legislature. So if you can give a couple words on that, we'd appreciate it. Like I said, Rep Nakashima, we don't even know if he's going to be able to log in because he's traveling right now. So the sequence is Mayor Roth, and then you, Rep Lowen, Floyd McCoy, if he can get on. He's not feeling well today, so he may not come on. He's a adjunct professor from the University of Hawaii Volcanology Department. And then Eugene Tien, who's the state chief economist out of DBED. So those are the scheduled speakers, and we'll run it through on that. If you want to get your slides ready so that we can give you control and you can pull them up, could do that.
Sure.
And we've got about 3 minutes to start time, so we'll just wait for a few more folks to log in, and we'll start rocking and rolling.
Still writing notes. What to say?
What did the Marines say? Adapt, improvise, and overcome.
Yep,
Something like that.
something like that.
And we got Kirsten Turner from Energy Office on as well. So if we have any specific questions for her, we can pick on her.
Kristen.
Morning, Kirsten. And Alicia Moy. If it's the Alicia Moy I know, that's impressive.
It's an important topic.
Yeah. And Dave just popped in. So Mr. Molinaro, I just shared with Mayor Roth an email I sent to you yesterday saying you should give him that Polaris vehicle, the 2 5-kilowatt generators, and the 2 light carts. So cat's out of the bag, sorry.
Okay.
We'll take it, Dave. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, we'll talk
mean-
more about that one.
Yeah, a state to county should be an easy swap.
Stan, I didn't see that email. When did you send it?
I sent it to your private email address. I
Oh,
didn't
you did?
send it to-
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, the top secret email.
Yeah, the top secret email.
Okay.
And then I see my favorite nose gunner just logged in, Clint Churchill. He's been doing some great op-eds in the Star Advertiser. All right, my Mickey Mouse watch says it's 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So welcome to everybody. I'm Stan Osterman. I'm going to be moderating this forum. And we still have people joining us, so we'll let them keep joining in. But Michael Markowitz runs Renew Rebuild Hawaii. It's his baby. And I'm just filling in the role as kind of the juggler. And so Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you for opening remarks.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Aloha. And today we have the honor of hosting Mayor Roth of the Big Island and Representative Lowen. And thank you very much for coming. And we on Oahu, we don't often understand all the complexities of what takes place on the neighbor islands. And this gives us a view of all the very interesting things that the administration of Mayor Roth is undertaking. And so we greatly appreciate your being here. And we also thank Eugene Tian from DBED, and we want to thank Hawaiian Electric for sponsoring this, and the Hawaii State Energy Office, and HPU. And when we look at the future of Hawaii, so much of it depends on what happens outside of Honolulu on the neighbor islands, because the issues that people in the neighbor islands grapple with are so real every day. And on Oahu, we have a level of insulation from problems because we have so many people and so many institutions. But on the neighbor islands, everything that happens is personal and close and real. And you really see the importance of local leadership. So I want to thank you, Mayor, for being with us. And Stan, please take it away.
All right. Well, Mr. Mayor, we've already talked to you a little bit earlier about the challenges that you have on the Big Island, and we know that you got a big landmass. You've got, I think, a fairly big population that's under the poverty line or look close to it. So you've got challenges there. You got weather events. You got albizia trees. You got all kinds of things to deal with, but they all kind of get impacted by energy, including your whole economy gets impacted by energy. So as the state moves towards its clean energy goals in the renewable portfolio standard, the Big Island has some unique capabilities and some unique opportunities, like with geothermal, for example. So we'd like to basically let you have the floor and tell us about your plan to move the Big Island forward in renewable energy, and hydrogen and geothermal and solar and wind and whatever to pull your state, your county ahead and take care of things like food security and transportation and things, and clean all those things up and make them viable. So the floor is yours, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, and aloha. It's great to be here talking to you. And first, let me start off with a caveat that I am not an energy expert by any means. I do have an energy office led by Riley Saito and Doug Adams, who are both on. And quite frankly, I thought when I accepted this, that it was going to be a panel and they would talk a little bit about some of the more technical things, and I would just be kind of on the panel to talk about the general picture. So happy to kind of give you a view and kind of tell you how we kind of got to where we got. While I was running for mayor, I was asked to be on a panel to talk about the Aloha Plus Challenge and the Aloha Aina Economics Futures. And it's kind of funny because there was people on my team that told me, don't do it, it's a trap. And so I said, no, much like this talk, people asked me to come out and talk. I'm going to go out and talk, and asked me to be on a panel. I'm happy to do that. And so I started looking at the Aloha Aina Economic Challenge, and it's a plan that's written out by Hawaiians, and there's a lot of great things. And then the Aloha Plus Challenge, those two things together really had a big influence. I saw a lot of things that we were running on that were part of that, and a lot of things that we should be doing for our environment, for our community, for our government, just a different way of looking at government. One of the questions during that panel that came up was, what are you going to do about sustainability? And we came up with an answer. I came up with an answer that within the first 100 days of our administration, we were going to have a sustainability summit. And it's kind of interesting. 100 days is not a lot of time. So prior to coming into office, but after being elected, or right around the time being elected, I had put together a team of people who knew a lot more about sustainability than I did. And that team was led by Kate Logan, Noel Moran, Eugene Yap, Richard Ha, and then Doug Adams came on, and they started planning this sustainability conference. I honestly thought we'd probably get about 100 people in the room at a hotel. They'd come up with some ideas that we could look at, and that would be kind of it. Well, first month after I get in, I have a heart attack, which didn't really stop us from having this conference. I got back from my heart attack, and I think on the 87th day, we launched our sustainability conference, not in a hotel room because COVID was going on. And so we had to continue to pivot and be flexible. And I think that's really, as we talk about energy, we have to think about being flexible and being able to pivot. But we did it on Naleo, and at that conference summit, we had over 2,300 people who registered to be a part of that summit, 14 different groups. Some of the people who are on this call were actually part of that summit. Some of those people actually ran some of those different groups, 6 keynote speakers. And, one of the things that came out from 2 of the different speakers that talked were Hawaii Island can and should be the sustainability classroom to the world. I thought about that. Well, what does that mean? It can and should be the classroom to the world. We have so many opportunities here. While we were, excuse me, while we were planning the summit, the team asked me a very simple question that I really had to think about. And that was, what is my personal definition of sustainability? And I would imagine that if I asked all of you what your personal definition of sustainability was, that we'd have just about as many opinions as we have on this call right now. Hang on one second here. But to me, it means all the things it means to you. But in addition to me, what it meant was the ability to allow our kids to raise their kids here on Hawaii Island, and in turn let their kids raise their kids here on Hawaii Island. And so, excuse me, I started thinking, what does that look like? How does that happen? And we continue to ask this question: is how do we make that happen? I came up with 3 main things. First of them is affordable housing. So we've been really focused on affordable housing, looking at how to make that happen. Part of affordable housing, a big part of affordable housing, is how do you make it financially practical? And how do you get people to want to do that? And when you're talking about housing, who are you trying to get housing for? We're not trying to get housing for the mega millionaires. We have enough of those on our island. We need to make sure that our kids have housing. And so our affordable housing, we looked at breaking the silos, bringing people together, bringing people from outside, and rather than being goalkeepers, how do we help them thrive and succeed? So when we came in, we had about 1,200 units in our affordable housing pipeline. Today, we have over 6,300 units in our housing pipeline, our affordable housing pipeline. We looked at permitting. We knew that permitting, I guess UHERO did a study, we were the worst in the nation, and pretty much the whole state was the worst in the nation. But when we came in, it was taking over 200 days to get a permit in if there was no changes that had to be made. Today, we just did a study this last month, we're at 28 days. So part of that is intentional thinking about how we're going to get there. Second thing that we looked at after affordable housing to make sure that Hawaii Island has that possibility of allowing our kids to raise their kids here, had to deal with quality jobs. What are the quality jobs for tomorrow? And what are the jobs that our kids want to go into, that they want to stay here? And so as we looked at that, we saw that the STEAM were the jobs: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And so we've been really focusing on how to make that happen. Part of that is making sure that our future generation has the tools, has the connections to make that happen. So there's a whole bunch of different things that we're working on. But one of the things that we've been working on, or I've been working on for several years, is a group called Next Tech, or and Noel, I know you're on there, and for some reason the Success Factory Success Factory, i.e. Next Tech, which Noel plays a huge role in. They do a competition called the Fish Tank, and they have mentoring programs with people like, I saw Doug Simons up there, and I love giving this quote, and Doug, we'll see you tonight. Doug Simons as a mentor in astronomy is like having Michael Jordan as a mentor in basketball. We have, some of our mentors, people that have the need to make sure that they have people coming back in the future, because we have a hard time finding people here in Hawaii to do a lot of the work. And a lot of our kids don't have those connections. So part of that, what we're doing is we're building those connections. So those kids have a path back, and our STEAM industries have a path to good people. We've been working with Climb High and some other programs that help people get ready, as well as programs that are helping people thinking about getting into those jobs, for example, fixing solar panels and installation and things like that. So making sure that we have those quality jobs for the future that are going to want our kids to want to come and live in Hawaii has been something important to us. And the third, but not the final wing of this, is affordability. Hawaii has some of the highest prices, and I don't think I have to tell you, we're talking about electricity and gas, but everything that happens has to be pretty much shipped over here, and it's very, very expensive. And so we wanted to make our island more affordable. And so you start asking the question, how do we do that? What are our biggest challenges? And our biggest challenges do come to energy, whether we're talking about fossil fuels or electricity. We pay some of the highest rates in the country. And so we start by thinking, how do we change that? You have to realize the county is not in the energy business. We don't control the utilities. We don't produce energy. And so we start asking the question on how we can help. And part of that is trying to assist people who are bringing green energy to Hawaii to succeed. And when we talk about green energy, we think about green energy not as a one-stop shop. In other words, we can't just rely on solar. We can't just rely on geothermal. We can't just rely on wind. It's a portfolio. And the more things you have in your portfolio, the more likely it is that you're gonna succeed. We spent the last 100 years with one thing in our portfolio. And so we started to imagine what the future looks like. And we started to look at what our possibilities are out there. And hydrogen came out as one of the greatest possibilities for our future. And I know we have some, I saw Don Rudney on here, I don't believe that hydrogen is in our future. But I think it is in our future. I think it is something that, a lot of people are talking about. There's trillions, billions of dollars in the United States alone in grants and funding that are going to be put out there in this year coming. I mean, I think there's about $8 to $12 billion going toward hydrogen from the United States government alone. And then you have what's happening in Europe and Japan and all over the place. So we're looking at how we can utilize hydrogen. And I'm going to use the word hydrogen society, which is, I guess, the worst term out there, because what it brings up in people's minds is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a community or a society that utilizes hydrogen kind of as part of that portfolio of things to do. So, for example, we're looking in the area of transportation. We have our first hydrogen bus. I think Mitch Ewan is on here, so thanks, Mitch. We go online on July 11th with our hydrogen bus. We have put out for grants. I think we got an $11 million grant in which we're going to buy electric buses as well as some hydrogen buses. Those are about 2-3 years out into the future, just because of how long it takes to get those buses. But I like to think about one of my favorite quotes is a quote by Wayne Gretzky. Wayne Gretzky said that great hockey players don't play to where the puck is, but where the puck is going to be. And again, that is where we're going, is hydrogen and other green energies. Hawaii Island is uniquely situated to make green energy. We have geothermal, we have solar, we have wind. And by the way, I just saw another thing that's coming out of Spain called Vortex Bladeless, something kind of interesting. It's a windmill without mills. It's bladeless. Wave energy, biomass energy. I know a lot of people don't like that. We're looking at what are the cleanest, safest ways of making energy. And so part of that, what we're doing is we just put out an RFI requesting information on climate change solutions and some of these ways of building energy. So we may not be the people that are actually owning these companies that are doing the work, but we want to find out what it is. Maybe we can have a public-private partnership to make some of these things happen. We have become a part of a hydrogen alliance with Namie, Japan, and Lancaster, California. And basically, Namie, Japan is the first hydrogen society in the world. They're in Fukushima, right by the nuclear reactor that went down that actually caused their whole community to evacuate for 6 years. They don't want to go back to nuclear. And so they're looking at how do they produce energy for the future. The other partner in our Hydrogen Alliance right now is Lancaster, California. And Lancaster, California was the first net zero city in the United States. They're also looking at ways of building up on hydrogen. And it's interesting, we're all looking at different things. We're primarily looking at the current time of building up hydrogen through for our transportation, but they're actually looking at powering buildings and other things, which I think is pretty fascinating. Some of the other things we're working on, we have a climate action plan. And so the integrated climate action plan went out for public comment. It just came back. We're going to be reviewing all of the comments that have been put out by the community and putting out our climate action plan. And basically what that climate action plan does is it says, County, you're going to talk about having a sustainable Hawaii Island. You guys need to lead by example. So we're saying, yeah, we do need to lead by example. We need to be taking those steps to make sure that our environment is clean. We need to be making sure that we have charging stations for our electric vehicles. We need to be making sure that the energy that we're using on in our offices is not costing or not burning as much energy. And so we're going to be putting this plan into play. Like I said, at this point, I think until next month, we have it out for, we just got done with public comments. We'll be reviewing those and be putting out a final on that. We're looking at SBs. So energy saving procurement contracts to help us pay for these things. Public-private partnerships. We're looking at implementing a system where EV systems and how we electrify our fleet. I think right now, part of that is going through our legal departments. I think we've been moving kind of far ahead. We got to the part where we're working on contracts and some of those things. And we're playing a huge role in the hydrogen hub, which is a possibility for the state to receive up to $1 billion. Our state is one of 34 applicants that are left in this. Like I said, I think there's $8 to $12 billion that the United States government is giving. We feel pretty good about our chances in getting that, but even if not, we feel that we have a possibility. I'm just going to finish on a couple of other things. Have some other notes. Talk a little bit about hydrogen. and what we're looking at. We don't have the complete plan yet. We're still looking. And so with our Hydrogen Alliance, I had an opportunity to do a couple of things. One, I had an opportunity in the last couple of months to visit NREL and look at what is happening as far as technology. At NREL, the National Renewable Energy Lab in Colorado, there's a lot of work going on in hydrogen. One of the things they were looking at is fueling up large vehicles, and hydrogen you fuel with kilograms. And so they needed to go from 2 or 3 kilograms a minute to 10, and they had 3 years. They're up to 12 kilograms a minute that they can produce. They're looking at bringing down the price of hydrogen, and they're looking at a price within the next 5 years of $1 to $2 a kilogram, which really makes things different. I went to the Verde Exchange in Los Angeles from there, and at the Verde Exchange got to hear a lot of different people that are working in the energy fields, and got to see some amazing things happening in hydrogen. The Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach is looking at changing over what they do to hydrogen. They have their first cranes, for example, that are being powered by hydrogen. And then we went to Lancaster and we saw people that are doing some amazing things as far as solar energy to hydrogen. We saw one of the possibilities that we're looking at is taking our landfill, which is covered over, and putting out, Riley can probably tell you exactly how much methane into the air, but capping that off and creating hydrogen, which would be enough to probably do half of our bus system, or the trucks that are going across island. We're looking at our wastewater facility that needs to be replaced and figuring out how we can make hydrogen or energy from the wastewater, turn that negative into something positive. So a lot of different possibilities. As far as the science, we are going to judge those things. We're going to look at those things like everything else. Oh, there it is. 300 standard cubic feet per minute, 50% methane. Riley just put that in the chat. I just saw it popping up on my screen. We're looking at the possibilities for the future. We can't allow us to just stand still and do nothing. If you look at how fast things have changed, I look across and I see a lot of the faces on the screens. I just want you to think about this. In your lifetime, a lot of times we talk about computers. Think about music. How have you received your music? Probably in the beginning, you received it by plastic albums, maybe reel-to-reel tapes, 4-track, 8-track, cassette, MP3 Walkman players. And now if I ask you about how you receive your music, I would put money that most of you receive your music over your telephone. That's in our lifetime. We think about how fast progress is going. I was looking at something just the other day dealing with the information you have on your watch, our smartphones, our smartwatches. In 1948, the Dick Tracy comic came up with a watch two-way radio. 64, they came up with the television. Today we have, those things. If you think about investing in the future, if you invested in Apple 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, how much that little investment, you didn't have to put the whole house on it for that investment. You just needed a little, and it will go a long way. And that's what we're looking at as we thinking about hydrogen and other green energy opportunities. Again, it's a portfolio. It's not a one-off. So I look forward to your questions. Thank you for allowing me to present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and great presentation. I've been looking through the questions that we were sent previously and some of the ones on chat, and I think you've covered quite a bit. but I have a couple here that I'm gonna try and consolidate. One was, could you expand a little bit on your views on geothermal for the Big Island? And the potential for the Big Island to capitalize on geothermal as a firm power on your systems?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of geothermal. I think that, we're at 25. They have a license to go into 40. I think that's great. I think there's some real possibilities. That's just for Puna geothermal. There's possibilities of other places on our island. And I think if we're gonna allow our kids or give our kids an opportunity to raise their kids here, we can't just talk about what we don't want. We got to talk about what we do want. We have to find ways of making that happen. And I think we have the possibilities of doing that with geothermal, not as the only piece of our portfolio, but as a part of it.
Thank you. And to kind of go back to your challenge with affordable housing and permitting and things, another entity that seems to bog down processes is the Public Utilities Commission. Could you share a little bit on your view of Honua Ola and how the PUC interact? I mean, they've basically been up against the PUC 3 times. Twice it was approved, once it was disapproved, and then it went to the state Supreme Court. And now it looks like Honua Ola is going to go back to the PUC. And that process has added years and years and years to a project that has brought a $500 million piece of infrastructure to your island. Could you just kind of talk a little bit about what you see for the future of Honua Ola and biomass as a sustainable energy medium?
So I think, first off, this doesn't come under the county's control.
Right.
It does come under the state's control. And I think they're again a piece of a portfolio that can be out there. One of the things that we have in our hang on one second here. I know I have this sitting around here on my desk. Hang on one sec. Our request for information. I think it's worth reading just the overview. The County of Hawaii is requesting information from the community and innovators on climate change solutions, specifically a net zero emission, green hydrogen, and renewable energy economy and sustainable infrastructure. One of the things it talks about is how we make that. And so if it is net zero, and if it's going to be a cleaner energy and it's going to help with that, then we're all for it. I don't have all the science on that, but I think the PUC has been a problem for several things. I know we had our batteries up there. That took a long time. We had geothermal that got stuck there that eventually got approved. I think it takes the PUC too long for just about anything going through there. And, that was one of the reasons why we looked at the energy emergency. Interesting. One of the things that came back from the governor is that we need to look at our permitting system, and especially how we deal with our solar, our EV, or solar panel permits and solar permits. We actually did that, and that's one of the big things that was holding things up. We're taking responsibility on our end and making sure those things are moving quicker. We see some changes in the PUC, and we're actually pretty optimistic going forward. As far as one different way of doing it or another, if they can do it in a clean manner that is going to be with a net zero emissions, then that's a possibility we should be looking at.
I think that addresses it pretty well, sir. One of the other questions came up as we planned this was, this is supposed to be an El Nino year, and that starts to tie into a lot of the possibility of hurricanes, things like that. What is what's the county doing in terms of making sure that, you're working with Helco on clearing trees that may impact power lines? Like I said, when we've talked before the show, you've got the biggest landmass in the state, and that means your power lines run a long distance, and we have those trees impacting power lines that impacts energy to your citizens. Um, how are you working with Helco to mitigate those things, and what is your plan going forward into hurricane season to help the citizens on the Big Island deal with the potential for a hurricane?
So couple of different questions there. One with what we're doing. We just went through a whole training with the whole state. The mayors and the governor had another training on, and dealing with disasters. So we're putting some of those things in. We're looking at going out to our community, just like we did with Mauna Loa, and having those conversations with our community, getting them prepared. We'll probably be putting out, you'll probably see a lot of informationals coming out, communications from our office on being prepared as well. But remember, even though it's an El Nino year, there's a lot. That doesn't mean that, it hits us. We've seen on years that we've only had a couple. It only takes one to hit us. So we should be prepared every year, not just when we're looking at an El Nino.
Okay. I'm looking here, you've covered most of these, including workforce development. I mean, you kind of talked about that up front with your STEAM. And by the way, thank you for the A in STEAM instead of just STEM from a fine arts major from the University of Hawaii, because I think artists give that alternate look on how to solve problems. And I think that when it comes to diversity, diversity of how your brain works, and engineers and artists definitely work differently. I think that's an important piece in there. So thanks for including that. So you've addressed some of the workforce development early on. And kind of back to Ho'onua'ola, the eucalyptus trees that were planted originally as a crop are at some point going to have to be dealt with because they're not meant to be a forest. Is this county doing anything to consider options for if Ho'onua'ola is not allowed to do biochar and biomass power, what you're going to do with eucalyptus trees and how you're going to manage the thousands of acres that are planted in a eucalyptus crop right now?
Yeah, we've had some really good conversations with people that want to use them as building materials. And we're supportive of that. I'm supportive of that, I should say. I think there's some of the regulations in the international building code that they still have to meet. I know that we have actually a few test houses that have done pretty well over here. But the county owns none of those trees, and so what happens with those trees is really going to depend on what happens with their owners. They're looking at things, and we're trying to help them succeed where we can.
Good. I mean, I know it's a complicated issue, but at some point they could become the county's issue if those trees turn into a fire, like a forest fire type scenario. The county's the one that's going to end up having to deal with that and mitigate it and deal with that fallout. So yeah, I'm glad you're addressing that, because those weren't planted to be a forest. They were planted to be a crop in place of sugarcane.
Right. And we've actually had fires in that area where those trees are.
Yes. So anyway, I just want to make sure that, I addressed that question that came into us. And that I think that pretty much covered it. We've had some come in on the chat, and some of them are a little bit outside where I want to go with some of the discussion. So one of the things that I do with Michael beforehand is I talk to the presenters, if I don't know them especially, and make sure we don't go into areas that I think are just too controversial and too polarizing to really talk about. So some of the questions that came in, some of them hit that area, and I'm not going to bring those questions up, but you can see them in the chat. We're recording this whole thing, and you can look at them in the chat and see them, and then maybe you can address them. Your staff can address them directly with the people asking the questions. But I think you've hit most of the high points, and just want to thank you again for your time this morning. as you address this. And personally, I admire the way you do business. I think starting with the sustainability project and the sustainability conferences and stuff, I was at the second one you did. And I think that if more people attended that or participated in it, they would understand the direction your administration's going and the kind of solutions you're looking for, and would probably not wait until something hits the newspaper and then shotgun blast back at you like, how did you do this? Why did you do this? Nobody asked me. Well, you had a conference and the conference was open to everybody and you answered a lot of the questions there. I think I hope more people participate in your sustainability projects because you answer a lot of questions there. You get a lot of community feedback there. And I think it's a great forum. So I'm glad you highlighted that at the beginning of your talk.
Well, thank you very much. And I know Doug and Riley are on here, and I know a lot of the questions that are put up on the chat, they're going to be monitoring coming back, and you know, we will be looking at those and taking them
So
into consideration.
my role as a moderator, so I didn't want to get into a big argument on this forum. But I know your folks will address it as you look at the chat questions. Next up, Mr. Mayor, is Nicole Lowen coming to us from the state legislature. She's going to have a couple minutes to talk about what the last session in the legislature did, and maybe some things looking forward. So, Nicole, do you have any slides to share, or are you just
Sure,
going to
I
talk?
have a few slides I'll go through quickly, and then I'll add some additional comments to that.
Okay. So if we
Just
can
give
let
me a
you share that, I
second.
hope.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is saying host disabled participant screen sharing. So I think if you
Yeah.
make me a co-host, I might be able to share.
Okay. I can't see. Okay, it should be. Can you?
Okay, now it's working.
All right.
We're getting better at that.
Yes.
All right, this always
Okay.
happens.
Good.
This always happens where, okay, here we go. Okay, hi. Thanks for having me here today. I'm Nicole Lowen. I represent District 7 on the Big Island, so Kailua Kona, North Kona, South Kohala area. And I have been in the legislature. This is my 11th year, my 6th term, and I chair the Committee on Energy and Environmental Protection. And this is my 5th year doing that. So this year, we actually did not, there was a lot of bills that got pretty far and then died at the last minute. It was a little bit of a rough year at the legislature. So I'll go through some of the stuff we passed, some of the stuff we didn't pass, and then maybe quickly just a reminder of all the things that we have done in recent years. Starting with energy efficiency, because I think this is where we had a lot of focus and success this year. Also just to frame that, energy efficiency is so important. You know, we have these goals for getting to 100% renewable. We're working on, you know, electrifying a lot of things in order to get there. Not saying 100% of everything is electrification, because I know there's a lot of, you know, hydrogen fans on this call, but that's going to be a big part of it. And as electrification grows in transportation and with buildings, et cetera, the demand on the grid will grow. And we're going to have to really focus and dig deep on energy efficiency to get us towards that final goal. So this builds on work we've done in prior years, but two of the things we did this year. One is we're going to phase out allowing the sale of fluorescent lamps that contain mercury in the state. And this sounds kind of wonky, but actually it's a pretty big and important step. These are half as efficient as, you know, or less as LEDs, and they don't last as long. So on a life cycle cost basis, the LEDs are cheaper. And they also contain mercury, which is a hazardous waste. It's toxic, it gets in the environment, you know, ends up in landfills. A lot, look, probably most of our people's compact fluorescent bulbs, when they dispose of them, majority don't get disposed of properly as hazardous waste. So now that we're moving on to better technology of LEDs, it's gonna really facilitate getting everyone to transition by just taking these off the shelves. Because I think people don't know, or they get used to what they're, you know, used to getting, or it's still cheaper at point of sale. And so this will, I wish I had the numbers on the tip of my tongue, but, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in savings to Hawaii's residents on their electric bills. And the other bill listed here, SB 691, this bill adds to our existing appliance efficiency standards. And I think the bigger thing in this bill is also that it gives power to the Hawaii State Energy Office to move forward with adding new efficiency standards on their own without having to pass a bill at the legislature. So kind of similar, I mean, similar idea to the mercury lamp phase out bill. There's just these steps we can take that really have no upfront cost for consumers. You know, if you take less efficient appliances off the shelves, many of these things have no additional upfront cost, and the savings start for the consumers on day one. But it's just a matter of sort of forcing the choice in that direction. And then a bill that did not pass this year, but that will come back to next year, was extending the state's energy efficiency portfolio standards out to 2045 and putting in a bigger goal in terms of the amount of savings there. And that work is continuing at the PUC even without a bill. But right now, the energy efficiency goals for the state technically end in 2030. So, you know, now that we're kind of pushing up against that time frame, it's time to extend them. The second place I'll focus is clean transportation. We had a number of bills this year that didn't pass. I would say more than did. The ones that passed that I list here: safe routes to school, bike storage, and this clean transportation is kind of this SB 1024 is sort of goal setting, plus a couple working groups to add more focus on to aviation. But the first two bills on that list of the bills that passed are kind of focused more around vehicle mile reduction rather than, you know, transitioning to alternative fuels or electric vehicles, which of course, kind of like energy efficiency, this should be the first thing that we think about that often kind of gets forgotten. It's also not only are we saving use of fuel, saving electricity, saving energy by not driving those miles, it typically leads to kind of better, you know, healthier communities, better walkability, bikeability, and things like that that make places nice places to live. Some things that didn't pass that we'll come back to next year, House Bill 346, this was focusing on workplace charging in state facilities. So as we transition for passenger vehicles, where, you know, what we're looking at now is largely the transition for passenger vehicles is going to be to electric vehicles. We need to provide charging at workplaces for a couple of reasons. One, to shift the peak demand on the system to the daytime charging hours when renewables on the grid are greater. And two, this will open up the opportunity for you know, people who maybe can't charge an EV at home to be able to consider purchasing an EV. The second under this list of didn't pass, HB 1252, there's a typo here. This should read incentives for EV charging and affordable housing. So the idea here was to have just an incentive-based, you know, no penalty, no mandate, to encourage the installation of EV-ready, you know, for new construction with affordable housing. This would probably include a lot of multi-unit dwellings like condos and apartments. On Oahu, for example, under the county's building code, there are some requirements for EV-ready new construction, but then they exempted affordable housing. And this is, you know, a problem on the equity front also. I think people at all income levels should have the opportunity to be able to purchase an electric vehicle. If you cannot charge it at home, you don't have charging options, it's not going to be an option. So including that upfront wiring in affordable housing, it doesn't mean the chargers would be there today. It doesn't mean there's a demand for it today, but just having the wiring ready is much, much cheaper than coming in and retrofitting after the fact. And then when the demand for that grew, it would be easy to come in and put in electric vehicle chargers. And then we also had a number of other measures looking at incentives for EV purchase. There are, of course, federal incentives right now, but they're sort of applied to a limited number of models because they have the manufactured in the US requirements on those. Looking at rental fleet transition, and we also had some bills for private, looking at incentives for private fleet transition. None of those passed, but you know, we'll come back to them next year. And then we did have some success of some provisions directly in the budget. First, I'll talk about I'll go bottom to top on this list. So the hydrogen hub funding that is matching funds for the hydrogen hub application that was discussed earlier. So I won't go into too much detail on that. That would only get expended if the application is, you know, one of the ones that wins the award, but it's set aside in case that is the case. We also put 100 million towards the Hawaii Green Infrastructure Authority with the idea to target this funding towards financing rooftop solar plus battery systems for ALICE families or low and moderate income families. This funding was one of the things the governor mentioned he might reduce because he needs to, you know, find ways to bring the budget down based on new revenue projections. So, you know, that might get reduced to 50 million. We'll have to see how that comes out. But the idea of this funding is it's not grant funding that gets given away. This capitalizes that fund so that 100 million or 50 million, whatever it ends up being, will be a substantial amount of money to give out low interest loans that will keep that program going for a very long time. And then finally, we have in law both the electric vehicle charging system rebate program and a hydrogen fueling system rebate program. But those have been, you know, the hydrogen fueling system program was set up but never funded. And the electric vehicle charging system program has been funded by legislative appropriation every year. We set aside 3 cents a barrel tax each to each of these programs, but there was never in the past a corresponding ceiling increase for the PUC to be able to expend them without the legislature doing an appropriation. So long story short, this provision in the budget increasing the ceiling means these programs are funded free and clear of having to come to the legislature. That 3 cents a barrel tax is getting set aside for them, and that it's able to be expended without sort of coming to ask for permission every year. And then there's also some resolutions that we looked at that did pass this year. We passed a concurrent resolution supporting the hydrogen hub, a concurrent resolution supporting a permanent Department of Energy presence in Hawaii. And then we passed 2 House resolutions, one encouraging state agencies, and you know the county should do this too actually, to look at the direct pay options in the Inflation Reduction Act. So the tax credits in the Inflation Reduction Act for renewable energy, of course, don't apply to tax exempt entities like state, county, schools, other kinds of nonprofits, but there is a direct pay provision where the cost of those projects up to 30%, I think, can get directly reimbursed. So we want to put ourselves in a position to be able to take advantage of this. And then we also passed a resolution from the House saying we would support national carbon price. So that's like a national carbon tax at the national level. I'll go through this really fast. I think I'll focus on what's maybe most interesting to this group here. Bills that got really far but didn't pass. I think the permitting reform bill was really important. That was partly directing the counties again to do, and probably the permitting is probably where the, you know, the interface between the county and the energy system is where they really have the most impact to be able to make sure things are moving forward in a timely way. And often they don't. The solar permitting reform bill would have expedited smaller scale projects, residential projects, and small commercial projects. And hopefully that would have kind of cleared out the pipeline for some of the bigger projects that also tend to get delayed. And then we looked at, you know, geothermal, if there was a way to set aside some funding to try to incentivize, you know, looking further into geothermal. I know we can have some discussion around that later. I know there's a lot of other hurdles to overcome and conversations to be had around geothermal that are by no means going to be easy. So while I think I personally do support the idea of being able to expand geothermal energy, I also recognize that we can't pretend like it's right around the horizon, right, you know, right around the corner, and we're going to have some project online anytime soon, because we're pretty far from seeing anything like that happen. And then this was just a brief list of actions in recent years. So I felt like we didn't pass as much as I would have liked this year, but we've done a lot of things quite a lot in recent years. And this is maybe only the last 5 years and not even a comprehensive list. So I'll stop there with the slides and maybe just make a few other comments. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate just building on some of the stuff that the mayor said. I appreciate his kind of recognition of the importance of bringing costs down. That's really important for Hawaii Island residents and residents statewide. And I think, we'll take a mix of resources to get there. And I think while there's a lot of excitement and focus on hydrogen, and that's important, that we also have to, work with the whole variety of resources, including the ones that are sort of ready to deploy right now. Even the state's hydrogen hub application is focused on specific use cases around medium and heavy duty and transit, and sort of what we call harder to decarbonize sectors. Right now, it's not really cost competitive on the passenger vehicle side. And I think as far as energy systems or energy storage, it's really far away from being cost competitive. I mean, we all hope it gets there someday, to be honest. I think, the idea of hydrogen molecules being readily available any and everywhere on planet Earth makes it attractive. But right now, it's pretty inefficient to make clean hydrogen. And that's still a challenge that has to be overcome. And, there's kind of no amount of wishful thinking is going to change the economics of it. But change and innovation happens over time. And as we see, there's a ton of federal investment. So, we'll see if and when that happens, how it can be deployed. I would also add, I think that the important thing to think about too, when we talk about hydrogen, is that we have to expand energy sources in order to make it, right? Whether that's like non-grid connected solar or expanding geothermal, or other options out there. And I think in almost every instance, you'd have to do the, punch the numbers on it, but in almost any instance, the economics of putting it on the grid first is what would most benefit the residents of Hawaii Island. If we can make cheap energy, you can't make economical hydrogen without cheap energy. You can't do it. If we have cheap energy, we should put it on the grid first, get to 100%, get to being decarbonized, give those benefits to the residents who pay electric bills. And, so those two can also work together, right? Because you probably have to overbuild solar a certain amount, and you're going to have extra you could make hydrogen with. But, so those two could somewhat be concurrent. But I think the idea of building some standalone projects, just making hydrogen for export while we still have a grid statewide that's comparable to like Kentucky's, like we're not really very clean yet because, we don't have big hydro, and a variety of reasons. But I think that's just something to think about. If we really care about affordability, then you have to reconcile these things, because there's a lot of, I think, talk and a lot of misinformation, I would say, about what the role of hydrogen is going to be, where it fits in exactly, and also where the technology is at today. So that's my controversial opinion with this group. I don't think it's a controversial opinion in the world, but yeah, I think that's where I'll stop, and happy to
Okay.
take questions.
Thanks, Riploan. And again, in the chat, we did have some questions come up, and I'm hoping you can just glean them from there. I wanted to point out a couple of things, though. Like Mayor Roth said, we get our music differently today than we did 50 years ago. And as an acceleration to that discussion, the technology changes at a very rapid pace today. And so a lot
Yeah,
of
but
the
we adopt the
decisions,
technology when it's ready and it's cheaper and it makes sense. And I
Right.
hear you. I mean, I think we see that with battery storage, where for years, and even solar, people said it's not possible, it's not economical, it's not going to happen.
Right.
But the cost curve came down and we made it happen. And we want to see that happen with hydrogen. I'm just saying
Yes,
the
and I think
reality is still not
I think
there.
it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and it is happening,
Right.
actually.
But
I could give you breakings on it, but I don't want to get a long discussion on it. It's just that we do
get a lot of
accelerate,
things.
and we get a lot of information, and there's an information delay to a
Well,
lot
it's
of
not an
people.
either, it's not an either or,
Yeah.
it's not an either or, but I'm just saying, and I'm glad the county's moving forward on, fleet electrification for, passenger vehicles and the things
Right.
that make sense to do now, because those are our biggest bang for the buck in decarbonizing quickly in the shorter term, while we wait for, hopefully the hydrogen technology to catch up. But the reality is it's just still not there.
Speaking of waiting, one of my things is, I'm a hydrogen guy. It's my passion. But for years I've been saying, why don't we focus on hybrid vehicles now? And so I took that personally, and I bought a hybrid vehicle. And I get 60-something% better mileage than my other truck. So I have a Maverick and a F-150. My F-150 is about 15 miles per gallon. My Maverick is 45 miles per gallon. Now they do different work. They're not completely interchangeable, but for the amount of driving that most people do, I think that just going to a hybrid technology would meet that goal of being more efficient that you
Yeah,
brought
I
up
mean, I think
early
it's
in your
always
presentation.
it's always an option. I think there's a number of factors. One, like you said, it depends on the vehicle, because some can be much more efficient, but some are just a little bit more efficient than, like, you can get a lot of efficiency in just a straight gas powered vehicle by having an efficient vehicle, right? And then the hybrid adds a little more efficiency. So it's true that for today's grid, and also depending when you're charging and things like that, what time of day, that a hybrid is probably a bigger savings today on decarbonization. But if you're looking at grids that are becoming cleaner over time, then you have, kind of increasing returns on an electric vehicle. But I think anyone can always make that choice. I think the thing is that at least once they've tried them, a lot of people just prefer the pure electric vehicle, because then you're not doing the maintenance on an internal combustion engine, and there's just like other benefits in that too. But I mean, it's still a choice. And I
Yeah.
think the state has and there's also the tailpipe, I guess there's also the tailpipe emissions question, and whether we're creating pollution locally in our communities. But I mean, I think it's up for debate, but the choice is out there. It's not, we're not forcing an EV on anyone.
Right. I think the point is, if you can make a movement towards improvement, it may not solve the problem, but sometimes excellence is the enemy of good. We can go a long ways moving towards these goals if we looked at just improving a little bit and not putting a big X on a certain technology and saying, oh, don't do that, or it's
Well,
not
I
worth
think
it.
you
It's
have a
not
specific,
getting
I
us
think
to
you're
the-
coming from a certain corner. I hear you, but I don't think that, I don't think anyone's saying don't buy a hybrid, and I think the EVs are, as the grid gets cleaner, and we have projects in the pipeline that is going to continue to accelerate, that
Well,
those
I would say that
those have more savings.
the government's kind of wed to the carrot and the stick program. And I don't see the carrot for hybrid vehicles that I do for EV vehicles. There's no stick there for hybrids, but I'm saying that the government probably should put a little more emphasis on just getting improvement and moving towards hybrid electric instead of just focusing on EVs. For example, my hybrid electric is an electric vehicle, but I don't get any incentives, for parking or any of that stuff. It's not considered an electric vehicle by the state.
Yeah, there's
Anyway,
no
just
parking. There's actually very few incentives. There's just
right.
the
I know a lot of
charging
them went away.
system. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
no rebate at the state level. So
Yeah.
I think it's just you can drive in the HOV lane, which doesn't even
Yeah.
exist on Hawaii Island. So yeah.
And
there's
because
almost
we
nothing.
kind of wanted to focus on the Big Island and Mayor Roth, and he mentioned the permitting issue, and we've talked about PUC, and I wanted to point out though that a lot of times, although the permitting issue itself is a county issue, a lot of times those permitting things are driven by either the state or federal policy. For example, in some cases for wastewater treatment, you have to have an aerobic digester system as you go into your building permit process. And that's actually driven by the EPA, managed by the state health department, but pushed into this county permitting. So there is a connection in the permitting process, not only between the county and the builder, but the county, the state, and the federal government. And everybody plays a role in stretching out that permitting process. So, it is
Oh, I
important
wasn't
that
trying to cast blame. I just think,
no,
Mayor
I'm
said
just saying that that's where the
earlier.
cooperation is due. Like
Yeah,
with health department and stuff to streamline their processes as well.
sure.
I've actually been through these, but it should be a process that's not just thrown on the county to fix. The mayor showed where he's doing his part to do it,
Stan, I
and we
don't
need
think
to work with
anyone's.
everybody else.
Yeah, I don't, that's not what I meant. And I don't think anyone has said that. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, especially with DOH in particular. But
Okay.
because Mayor Ross said earlier that the energy is sort of less the purview of the counties, and I would say the PUC and the utilities probably have the most influence on it. And then the state, state legislature, state energy office in policy making, we can set policy for the PUC, the county cannot. So that's accurate. But I was just saying the sort of that wedge where the county really does play a role kind of falls in that permitting. It doesn't mean that there aren't also delays at the state level. Does
Right.
anyone have questions?
Most
Otherwise?
of them came through the chat. There were only a couple that I saw. We've actually hit a 1 hour time point. I'd like to let Eugene do his presentation. And if you have more questions for Nicole, if we throw them in the chat, maybe we can catch them at the end, or she can at least pull them out of the chat after we're done. But Eugene, are you ready to do your presentation? You're on mute, Eugene. Or you're sleeping. I don't see Eugene responding. I see him on the screen, but I don't see him responding. He actually had a good presentation. He talked about
Yes, I'm
the
here.
energy. Oh, okay. There you go. You gonna put your slides up?
Yeah, let me put my slide up and
Okay, there we go.
share my screen.
You scared me, Eugene. You
Uh,
almost went from my favorite economist to my second most favorite economist.
Yeah, do you see my slides?
Yes, we do.
Go
Perfect.
from the beginning. So my presentation will be short. I'm just going to talk about what is happening on the Big Island, Hawaii County. So Hawaii County, according to our data, they have 12 facilities, which is a utility scale power plant. Most of them are Hawaii Electric. You can see the first 7 is under HELCO, and there are some private. So then go on to the electricity generation by source of type of fuel. So we do see something around a little bit over about 62% generated by the petroleum. And we have the second column shows the geothermal. And since 2018, there was an impact from the volcano eruption, and it's still recovering. I think by 2021, the latest data we have is the recovery is about 183.8. So this is in megawatt hours, still recovering. We don't have 2022 data, but I believe the recovery will be higher. And then we do see some hydro, wind, and but majority will be in the petroleum. And go on to the electricity meters. So this is indication of the consumption, the number of customers. You can see is increasing. The increase is mostly from residential because the Big Island population growth is higher than the state average. There are more people moving to the Big Island, but we do see decrease from commercial meters, and we do see some increase in the street light, which is the county government. But the commercial is a decrease in commercial meters is a kind of a significant changes. Let's move on to electricity sales. The sales is pretty much stable. It's actually in the recent years is declining. 2020 decline is because of the COVID. The COVID is mainly is from the commercial, but we do see the residential is a slow increase, but we do see the commercial is actually declining, and increasingly is the street light. You see the consumption is actually declining steadily, but in the previous slide we do show the number of meters for street light is increasing, but the consumption is declining. I think there might be some changes to the renewable, and the Hawaii County, the RPI's renewable portfolio standard is around the second among the counties at 48% in 2022. It's just next to Kauai at 60.2%, and the state average is 32%. So continue with, I think there is some correlation between the decrease in the commercial consumption and also the millers. It may have something to do with the propane. We do see Hawaii County has increased significantly in 2021 on the propane imports. I think all of the imports are propane from the foreign country, but you can see the increase in 2021. So a few takeaways. As of 2021, Hawaii County did not have any utility scale solar plant. But I did search on the website and also on the energy office and HICO website. I do see some project, for example, the AES Wakalua solar battery storage project. It came online as May 1st this year, and there is other facilities under construction. So in 2017, before the eruption, geothermal generated about 28.8% of the Big Island utility scale electricity. And but in 2021, it's 17.1%. 2021, petroleum accounted for 63.2%. It's a little lower than the state average. But those data not including the customer cited solar electrical generation. And if we include that, so petroleum accounting for just a little over half of the electricity generation. Electricity sales has been trending down during the past 10 years, mainly due to the decrease in commercial. Electricity consumption by street light has been declining. I think that may have contribution by the city, the county government. Many businesses shifted to propane instead of electricity for their business. I think mainly is the restaurant industry. I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Eugene. Yeah, I know that the state Department of Transportation changed a lot of their street lights over to LED or other technologies in the last 5-6 years, and it did produce quite a bit of electricity savings for the state on the highways. The counties have the roads, of course, so they would have to do their own. But that's a good place to start. I was really impressed, or not impressed, but surprised by the propane chart you had there that showed that the county was actually increasing in propane imports. That was kind of surprising for me. I don't know why it was surprising, but it just seemed like I wouldn't expect that to be happening. I had a quick question for you that you may or may not know the answer to, but while you were doing your research, you might have seen it. Do the other counties have as much hydroelectric? Do they use it at all, or does the electric company do that on Maui and Honolulu County as much as the Big Island and Kauai do for their grids? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, I do have a table. We have a data book table, and it shows in the section 17, it shows all the energy used by county. So I think for those, our data book will be released on August 15th. I think.
Okay, so that's a DBED. That's a DBED product, right? Okay.
Right.
So people can go online, the DBED website, and probably look at some of the historic stuff. And when that new data table comes out, you can look at that. It's a good place for information.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eugene. We appreciate it. Again, if you have any more questions to put in the chat, I haven't seen any particular ones that we need to bring up, but I can't go through the chat and talk at the same time. We're at the hour and 10-minute point, so we've kind of hit our limit here on time. Is Rep Nakashima on by any chance? If you can just kind of unmute and come up if you're still there. If you came on, Mark, I know he's been traveling. Or also Floyd. If Floyd is on, Floyd McCoy. I didn't see them anywhere on there, but if they're both out there, we could give them a chance to say a few words. Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Michael to kind of wrap us up and thank everybody for A, participating, and B, contributing, especially Nicole Lowen, who always gets in an argument with me over something or another. Not that we don't like each other, because she's been a great energy head of the energy committee on the House side. And Mayor did a great
Bringing some facts to
presentation.
the table, Stan.
Well, yes, and facts do change quickly. So just asking that you also keep looking at the facts as they change, because they do change pretty quickly. And Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
You're
you.
doing a great job over there. So we hope we can help you get the word out quickly to your constituents as well, as things change. So if there's things Renew Rebuild Hawaii can do, or I know you have a direct into Sustainable Energy Hawaii, they're also a good way to get information out. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I need to jump off right now, but thank you, everybody.
Great.
Thank
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, I'll turn it over to Michael Markridge to close us out.
Aloha, and thank you all for coming, and thank you, Sustainable Energy Hawaii, and thank you for all of your questions. And until the next time, aloha, and thank you.
Aloha, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.